increase behavior change among extension clients. Our presenters are Laura Warner and Lisa Krimsky from the University of Florida Institute for Food and Agricultural Sciences. And as you're dropping your names and institutions in the chat box, just a little bit of housekeeping. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the National ESP website along with the 3 other webinars that have been offered this year. Each of you are on mute during the presentation. However, you may use the chat box to ask questions or make statements during the webinar. There will be time at the end of the webinar for our presenters to answer questions. So without further ado, I will turn the time over to our presenters, Laura and Lisa.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much, Jeanette. Excuse me. We will start off by introducing ourselves. My name is Laura Warner. I'm an associate professor in the Department of Agricultural Education and Communication at the University of Florida. I am also a part of the Center for Landscape Conservation and Ecology. Excuse me. My focus is on changing extension clients' behaviors, specifically using social marketing, and the other piece of that is program evaluation. So I work with folks in all different contextual areas of extension to improve the behavioral outcomes of extension programming. And my focus has really been on water and other natural resources, but specifically water conservation behaviors in the home landscape.
And I am Lisa Krimsky. I am also at the University of Florida IFAS Extension. I am a regional specialized extension agent that focuses on water resources. I'm affiliated with the Florida Sea Grant Program as well as the Center for Landscape Conservation and Ecology. And my focus is on coastal water quality and harmful algal blooms. So I would consider myself to still be a student of social marketing, and I have had the fortunate experience to both collaborate and benefit from Laura's experience. So I'm excited to kind of share what I've learned and as well as some of the lessons learned along the way in today's presentation.
Okay, so I'm gonna turn off my video here to make sure we have good bandwidth. So as you heard, both Lisa and I are really focused on water, but one of the reasons we're excited to share the topic with you today is that social marketing it really aligns well with any extension context. So if you understand some of the basic principles and tools, you can apply it in any area in which you work. And I wanted to ask before we get started if you could use the raise hand feature, if this works. How many on the call today have heard of social marketing? You can just raise your hand. Okay, that is helpful. I see a handful, maybe 6 or 8. Okay, thanks. And one more question: has anyone here today applied social marketing to their extension programs? Okay, I see about 4, maybe 5. Okay, thank you. So social marketing has been around as a behavior change technique since the 1960s, and it was first applied to public health initiatives actually in India, and it's been used really extensively in public health, but only recently has it been kind of embraced by extension and other forms of non-formal education, and then in other contextual areas such as environment. And there's just so much potential that that it has for our programs. So we hope that you'll see the compatibility, and social marketing it can be a really extensive process, but we hope to share with you today some of the tools and principles that can also be applied to your existing programs. So how does social marketing fit in with what we do? Couple things to note. First is that social marketing it's different than the typical approach where we assume that knowledge is the only piece of the puzzle that's missing. So a lot of times a campaign that's intended to change behaviors might be really heavily focused on providing information. While that information is certainly important, it's not always particularly effective. And the reason is that there's a lot of factors that influence behavior. And in many cases, education can have a minimal effect. Applying social marketing to change behaviors is all about understanding people's barriers and benefits to making a change, adopting a practice. And so we need to know why they will or won't make a change. And a lot of times when we get into researching people and what drives them, we find that knowledge is not the biggest component of why they're not changing their behaviors. So thinking about our extension audiences, there's often three major reasons if you're promoting something, whether we're talking about nutrition behaviors or environmental behaviors or anything in between. One reason is perhaps your extension clients, they just aren't aware of the problem, or they aren't aware of the behavior. So that's sometimes a simple reason that they won't adopt the behavior that you're promoting. Another reason is they may know about it, but they just perceive that there's too many challenges to making that change, or too many barriers. And the final reason is maybe they know about it and they don't think there are too many challenges, but there are just too many benefits to doing what they're currently doing. So folks they're really thinking about kind of if you think of like a commercial transaction, if you're purchasing something from the store, you want to feel like you are getting value for your money, or you're not going to buy that pair of shoes or other article in the store. So something to think about as you consider possibly applying social marketing to your programs is, have you done the research with your audience? Do you know really what truly prevents them from taking action? Definitely something important to think about, and maybe think about these three potential reasons. So this is our kind of formal definition of social marketing to change behaviors. Social marketing addresses a specific problem, whatever area you may be working in, and it addresses that problem by applying commercial marketing techniques and tools to influence a key target audience to voluntarily change their behavior. And if we kind of align this with commercial marketing, instead of looking to make a profit, we're looking to benefit society, the audience members themselves, and or the environment. But we're using principles of commercial marketing. With that, oftentimes you'll see social marketing for behavior change discussed in terms of the marketing mix. It's also called the 4 Ps, and that includes product, price, place, and promotion. And I hope you can see that there's kind of a lot of fun and creativity, which is one of many reasons social marketing fits well with extension. In that you're developing this marketing mix to essentially sell a behavior that your extension clients see true value in, and that's why they want to adopt it. You do that by considering the product, which is the behavior you're promoting, and it's considered in terms of a package. So it's not just a product. In the area that I work, we're talking about residents adopting household water conservation practices. But it's not just that behavior, it's that behavior packaged with the associated benefits, whether it's being a good neighbor, taking care of the environment, that sort of thing. And it includes what the audience truly cares about. So that's considered along with price, which is sometimes a financial cost, but that's not everything. It's the complete set of barriers that your audience perceives to be associated with making that behavior change, and there can be quite a few. The third P in that 4 Ps marketing mix is place, and that includes where the behavior takes place, and considerations include making the behavior more convenient and more accessible to your audience. And finally, promotion. This is oftentimes when someone hears social marketing, this is the one they associate with it the most. Because this is more your traditional marketing, but this is your communication channels, your activities, and the messages that you use. It's a really important part of social marketing, but not the only piece. This is where social media falls. Sometimes you'll hear about the 5 Ps marketing mix, and policy can come into play too. Sometimes that is something that needs to be integrated into a behavior change intervention to make it easier to adopt behaviors, or to make competing behaviors more difficult to continue. Social marketing uses audience segmentation, which is probably my favorite part of this approach to changing behaviors. But in extension, we want to do everything for everyone. It's something that makes extension so special. But it's, at the end of the day, we can't reach everyone. And bringing in this principle of audience segmentation, which is used extensively in commercial marketing, is this concept where we target subgroups within the broader potential audience. And those groups we select because their members are similar to one another and different from other groups in meaningful ways related to the behavior. So we might target a group of people who has the best potential ability to make an impact on the problem, or maybe it's the people who are being harmed the most by the problem. And there are a lot of different approaches, but these days we are all limited in terms of the resources we have for our programming. And something that I like about using audience segmentation is it gives us a thoughtful way to think about using our limited resources, and depending on how we apply it and what exactly we're promoting, you might select a single approach for one very important group, or you might select different approaches for different groups. And using these audience segmentation principles, you can really kind of hone in on your audience and find out what people need. It might be that one group has a very, very specific set of barriers that you need to address, and another group has another completely different set of barriers. And these principles help you to be to communicate in ways that are more salient with each of those subgroups. So audience segmentation can be informed by some really extensive audience research, and you might need to know demographics, psychographics, lifestyle, social norms, the likelihood that they will adopt a behavior, the impact they'll have if they adopt a behavior, things like that. And this all comes in to play in earlier stages of social marketing planning when you conduct audience research. So something to think about in terms of your own programming, and I think we're all guilty at times of trying to reach everyone, but are you trying to reach everyone, or are you considering specific subgroups within the potential audience that maybe can have the biggest impact on the problem that you're working to address in your communities? Okay, so another key set of principles that drives social marketing campaigns is that of barriers and benefits. People are influenced by whatever they perceive to be the barriers or costs to making a behavior change, and as well as the benefits they see to doing so. And it's going to be so very different from person to person, and also behavior to behavior. Even really similar behaviors within the same context, a lot of times you're going to uncover a different set of barriers and benefits. So barriers are the real reasons that your audience does not want to make a change, and they can be political, financial, emotional. They can be related to misinformation. So certainly providing information comes in here. A lot of times lack of time is a big one. Social norms or lack of social norms supporting the behavior change as well. And policies, existing habits. What really matters is that they're significant to the audience. So even if it's not even if it's an inaccurate perception, it doesn't matter. It's what is significant and perceived to the audience. And they can be tangible, intangible, conscious, subconscious, real or perceived. And then benefits, very similarly, are going to be very specific to the individuals. And these are the things that your target audience wants or needs that can be provided when they adopt a particular behavior. So as I mentioned, audience research really comes into play, and that market research that we apply in the early planning stages is really critical. So we can make an offer that our clients can't refuse in terms of adopting a new behavior. So important to keep in mind that when we're asking people to change, they have to change what they're doing, and it may mean that they need to reject another behavior, either that they're already doing or that they might consider. So you can't ask everybody to do everything. So there's some subconscious decision making coming into play. We have to understand those barriers so we can overcome them. And we want to use what we can learn about barriers and benefits to make sure that the benefits are outweighed by the costs. So that goes back to my example of purchasing something in a store. People need to feel that they're getting value for their effort. And at the end of the day, people tend to do whatever they think is going to give them the greatest benefits with the fewest or the least amount of cost. So these are a couple of the really big underlying principles of applying social marketing for extension. Some of the kind of best practices for applying social marketing is that it's really most effective if you can apply it from the very initial stages of the program planning process. When voluntary behavior change of a large number of people is your goal, when it's important to you to design a program that's relevant to your target audience, and I know that's important to everyone in this webinar today, because it takes time when you don't need to make an immediate change. And then also when you can define a specific problem and define your audience and goals. And for me, every single one of these just really kind of rings true for what we do in extension, and just it really makes it fit. As you can see, it's a timely process. There's a lot of planning and research involved. So if you're dealing with like life or death issues and you need something to happen tomorrow, social marketing is not appropriate. But there are many examples when it's really great to use. So if you start digging into the social marketing literature, you'll see a number of different multi-step processes ranging anywhere from 5 to, I think there are several that are maybe 10 or 12. I like this 5-step process because it's simple, and I think it really fits with the extension programming process that we use. And this is adapted from Mackenzie Moore, and that'll be a resource that we share with you at the end that is one we really like. So in the social marketing process, the first thing you do is choose behaviors to encourage among your audience. Then you analyze the target audience to understand their barriers and benefits. Then develop strategies, and using a bunch of different tools, and this is where you can really get creative. Next, you pilot it, the strategy, with a small subgroup, and lastly, broadly implement the program and evaluate it. So that first step, selecting behaviors, social marketing gives us some really good decision-making tools for selecting those behaviors, and I think that's important when we're doing our logic models and planning various programs. But the recommendation is that we select specific behaviors that are end state and indivisible, and they should have high potential impact, high likelihood of being adopted, and low current engagement. Something to think about is, what behaviors are you currently promoting? And are there behaviors that might better meet these criteria? Always something to consider. Won't get really into this today in a lot of depth, but there's some, I think it's a fascinating approach to selecting behaviors using actual mathematical formula to compare them. And I love being able to make decisions in this way using numbers whenever possible. But social marketing gives a process where we can take the potential impact, could be measured from, let's say, 0 to 4. In my example of household water conservation, let's say that's gallons of water. Anywhere from, this behavior might save virtually no water to, here's a 4, this behavior could save really quite a bit of water. Probability, the likelihood that your audience will adopt this behavior. Do they find it acceptable? Is it something that's relatively easy for them to do with few barriers, and so on? Current engagement then is how many people are already engaged in the behavior. And this one is scaled by inverse. So if everybody in your audience is doing this already, just about, it would be a 1, because there's very little potential for more people to adopt it. And then if very few are, it would get a 5. So in that first box, you can see these 2 example behaviors have the same potential impact. As far as probability, the second one is something that people are much more likely to adopt. The first one maybe is less acceptable. And then engagement is also equal. So maybe it's 50% of our target population is doing each of these behaviors. And you can see it makes a big difference that obviously the likelihood is what's making that second behavior a much more desirable behavior to promote in our program. And then second example here, you can see with our example behaviors 3 and 4, that first one is expected to be much more impactful. So maybe would save the households I'm targeting lots and lots of water. Probability wise, it's equally, they're equally as, folks are equally as likely to adopt each of those behaviors. But then engagement, if you look at the low number for behavior 3, there a lot of people are already doing this. And for behavior 4, there are very few people already doing this. And it kind of washes out. They're equally as desirable as far as promoting. And I really like this approach to selecting behaviors because it gives us kind of a scientific approach for making decisions. I'm going to hand the controls over to Lisa for this next part.
Okay, everyone. So I am going to talk about the second step in the process, which is, again, that market research component of identifying the barriers and benefits. And the way you do this is once you have selected your segmented audience or audiences, you really need to go and collect data and analyze it to identify what those barriers are and what the benefits are so that you can develop a strategy that's going to be meaningful and accepted. So there's a number of ways that you can do this. And first, you can look to the existing data. In extension, I think we're really fortunate in that we already collect a lot of data that is usable for this type of methodology. So we have evaluation tools that we use all the time, including program records and attendance and meeting minutes. We have past needs assessments. Needs assessments is something that we should all do for our programs to identify situational needs and priorities. We have emails and possibly newspaper clippings. We can go to the traditional journals and publications and go and examine already existing published materials. And I think depending on what behaviors you look at, there might be a lot of news associated with it, and social media is a really important tool where you can go to and see what people are talking about, and you can assess some of the existing data, the barriers and benefits associated with behaviors through those existing means. But there's also opportunities to collect new data, and this time can sometimes be overwhelming, but I think it's really important to understand that while surveys and focus groups, your more traditional social science methodologies are appropriate here and are extraordinarily useful, there are also opportunities for us to collect new data, especially within extension environments that maybe don't necessitate such a quantitative methodology. And so some ways just observations of competing and desired behaviors. As long as we are doing extension work and our stakeholders are one of those audiences that we have segmented and identified, well, then we can just sit back and observe what they do and what they don't do, and maybe why and why not, and use that as data to determine what those barriers and benefits are to our identified behavior. Let's see. There we go. Okay. And then once you've done your market research, so to speak, you want to then use that information that you've collected, again, aligning it with your audience segmentation needs and characteristics. And this is where you develop the strategy. And the strategy is where you combine sort of all of the pieces of the puzzles to be able to develop that products component of the 4 Ps, or the social marketing mix that Laura talked about. And so what you're going to do is you're going to try and identify those barriers, you're going to identify the benefits, and what you really want to do is you want to minimize those perceived barriers for that behavior that you are trying to target or the behavior that you are trying to promote, while promoting the benefits. And likewise, as Laura said, there's often competing or existing behaviors that our audience is currently participating in. And so we want to maybe shift the focus a little and and increase the barriers of that and maybe decrease the benefits and show why the new target behavior is better. And the tools that you're going to use, and many times you use multiple tools, are going to be part of this strategy for communicating those benefits while minimizing the barriers. And this is really essential because without minimizing those barriers, you're never going to be able to get your target audience to buy in and switch over into that behavior change. So the tools, there are a variety of tools associated in sort of the social marketing toolbox. These are just some of them, and we're going to talk about some of them in greater detail. I am going to try, when I sort of introduce these tools in the toolbox, I'm going to try and give examples from personal experience as well as from my colleagues, as well as in the literature as well. So some of my examples come from the Journal of Extension. They come from some of these resources that we're going to share with you at the end. But I also want you to participate in this component. I noticed a number of you said that you already participate in social marketing practices. And so I'd like for you maybe in the chat box just to talk about some of the tools that you've used and in what capacity, what was maybe the barrier that it minimized, or what was the behavior that you were trying to get adopted. So one of the first tools is removing a barrier. And so this can be removing a barrier of either a physical barrier, or it could be just a perceived barrier. But removing or overcoming of specific barriers is essential to success in situations, because if you can't reduce the barrier, then your audience simply won't change. And sometimes removal of barriers can be very, very simple. It can be just switching a perception, or it can be, perhaps another example is if one of your behaviors that you're trying to promote or reduce the use of single-use bags and promote the use of reusable bags, then a potential barrier can be is that people simply forget to bring their reusable bag with them. By having reusable bags available at the point of purchase, this essentially eliminates the barrier. If someone wants to make that change, they want to participate in that behavior, well then the barrier has been eliminated because that reusable bag is available right there. In other terms, removal of a barrier could be much more, it could be structural, and it could be bit more robust or maybe more resource necessary, but it could be critical in maintaining success of a program. And so, for example, there was a campaign in Boulder, Colorado. It was called the Go Boulder campaign. And it was created to reduce air pollution and traffic congestion that was existing in Boulder City, Colorado. So again, if you think about that, that's the goal, but that is not a behavior change. It's certainly not end state. And so what their end state and indivisible behaviors was to reduce the use of single occupancy commutes by increasing the number of people that ride bikes to work and increasing the number of people that took public transit, meaning buses. So the barriers that were identified by those was that people were not willing to ride their bikes to work because there simply were not sufficient bike lanes in the urban corridor. So people physically could not do that commute because the bike lanes weren't available. And then in terms of taking public transport, the major barrier there was associated with people were concerned that if they had to work late or if there was an emergency situation, then public transport wouldn't be available for them in maybe those off hours. So the solution for this, or the removal of that barrier, was the city actually increased the number of bike lanes, and they created a guaranteed ride home service. So essentially, if you were using public transport and that transit wasn't available in after hours, well, then there was that guaranteed ride home service with free taxi rides. So by incorporating those into their campaign, they essentially reduced the barrier and increased the benefits associated with those behaviors. Another tool is incentives. And incentives can be tangible, meaning physical, or non-tangible rewards. And they're often given in exchange for the behavior. And it's essentially offering an award for something. And by doing this, we know that it can increase the frequency of a behavior and reduce the difficulty of an action. And incentives can be really valuable for encouraging a trial period of the behavior. But there are certain things that you want to make sure is that whatever that incentive is that you can continue to offer it throughout the lifetime of the program. If you don't have sufficient resources, if you can't give that incentive to every one of that segmented audience that you are targeting, well, then it's probably not a good approach. So incentives are really useful to use when motivation to act is low. People otherwise would not act. And it can be used when, again, cost is one of the major barriers. It's also most effective when, again, that incentive is something that your audience values, when it's substantial enough to get their attention. And it's better to be used as to reward a behavior, not to punish a negative. However, there are some successful programs that do use disincentives. So for, examples of incentives that we are probably all familiar with is rebate programs. There are a number of energy saving programs where the actual cost of the energy saving device might be like an appliance, for example, might be more than what a homeowner is willing to pay for it. So by providing incentives in forms of rebates, you're giving monetary incentive that will likely increase that behavior. An example of a successful disincentive is in areas where they wanted to increase the amount of recycling and residential homes. They actually charged people to take away garbage, just regular garbage, but recycling was free. And so by having that disincentive associated with garbage removal, they were incentivizing people to use the recycling. And so that's a case where the disincentive was successful, but again, you have to be cautious with that because it's not always a great tool. There's been studies to show that in water conservation, for example, in the realm that Laura works in, where if you charge people more for the more water they use, that's not necessarily a disincentive for them. Okay. Another tool that we use and that we are probably all really familiar with, we see it all the time, these are prompts. And I know I've used these before I really knew what social marketing was and before we knew that it was really, even a tool. But these are essentially just memory aids, and they're presented in close proximity to the repetitive behavior. So what prompts do is they serve as reminders with very simple messages or images. Because many of the times the actions that we are trying to promote may be really simple, but they're also easy to forget. And so prompts can be utilized to remind that our target audience to engage in this behavior. They're most successful when people are already predisposed to doing an activity. They just need to be reminded to do it. And again, they're most effective when they're placed in close proximity to the location and time where that desirable behavior should occur. So for example, prompts, if any of you go to the grocery store, here our local grocery store is Publix, they always have in the grocery store a picture of their reusable bags. And it says, don't forget your bag right before you're going into the store. This way, if you keep reusable bags in your car, you remember to grab it. Recycling bins are another great example of prompts. So I have 2 different recycling bins in my community. We have one for paper products and one for everything else. And both of my recycling bins have prompts on the side of those bins that show what you can and cannot put in the recycling. So it's very simple. It's something you oftentimes don't even notice, but again, it's a point and time, place reminder of the behavior that you should and should not be doing. Another example is hand washing at restaurants. So we often, sometimes we don't even notice because they're so common, but you always see that sign above the sink in bathrooms in restaurants saying, employees must wash their hands. That's a prompt. So again, it's a behavior that we all should participate in, and it's just a reminder. The next tool is social norms. And so norms refer to common and accepted behaviors within a group. Essentially, they're what people do and what they approve others of doing. And so whether we like to believe this of ourselves or not, all day long, we really are motivated by what people think is normal and what we think the people around us expect us to do. And so social norms can become a really useful tool when you're highlighting sometimes like invisible behaviors. So one of the issues that we have in natural resource extension is that a lot of the behaviors that we're promoting are invisible. So you can't see them. You don't know that this is something that your neighbors are doing or actively engaging in, or it's something that they believe in. And so it's a way to, if you can make that invisible behavior visible and show that your community is also engaging in it and expects others to engage in it, well, then it creates this sort of incentive for those to do it. So an example of maybe an unseen behavior that we would want our audience to engage in would be, again, reducing energy use or water conservation activities in the home. Again, these would be very specific and state. I'm just providing sort of a general examples for you. Those are things that you normally wouldn't see, but by putting a sticker on the side of your recycle bin, recycling itself is a social norm. You're taking this bin, which is recognizable by everyone, that showcases that I am engaging in this accepted activity. If you add a sticker to the side of that recycling bin that says, I have reduced my energy bills by 20%, or I am using these smart water saving devices, that suddenly makes a behavior visible that otherwise wouldn't be, and it norms it to the community. So it's something that your peers believe in. And so this can be really useful. And again, it's things that we've probably seen all the time. So hotels are really frequently doing water conservation campaigns, and there's been quite a bit of studies that look at social norm messaging. And so one of the great examples that I like is that they compared the messaging of 3 different strategies for water conservation campaigns. And the first one sort of had that typical appeal to the environment where it said, water is a limited resource, it's in short supply, help conserve water by reusing your towels. The second message was trying to norm it by saying that 75% of guests in this hotel usually use their towel more than once. And the last message focused on the room, saying that 75% of guests in this room usually use their towels more than once. And it turned out that the last version was the most effective because it was able to norm individuals and residents into that specific room and really make it a behavior that they were willing to adapt to. Oftentimes, like messages like the first message, which is something that we in Extension tend to embrace and use a lot, saying this is a limited resource, help protect it, kind of goes against the theory of social norms. Individuals don't want to be seen as an outlier or as a hero. And by making people seem as if they're doing something that is not the norm, that is above and beyond what the general public does, can actually make them feel uncomfortable and less likely to participate in that activity. So, next time you're doing an extension program, think about ask your participants to commit to a behavior. Oh, sorry, I'm at commitments. My slides skipped before me, so I apologize for that. The next tool is commitments. So consider asking your extension participants to commit to a behavior. Commitment, again, is something that we use in extension all the time and probably don't recognize it as a tool, and maybe we don't use it to its best capacity. And what we're doing is by asking people to commit, we're asking people to do something. And this is really important because when you're asking people to do something and they agree to do something, it changes the way people see themselves. And it works because we like to be reliable. And a lot of commitment research has shown that self-perception is really important in determining why commitments work. And so this is sort of almost the alternate to social norms, where we care more about what others perceive or think about us and what that behavior is. This is more about making a commitment or a promise to ourselves. Commitments are most effective when they're in groups versus individual commitments, and when they're public versus private. So a lot of successful commitment campaigns will ask individuals if they can publish their names and show that they have committed to doing this behavior. Written commitments have also been seen to be more effective than verbal commitments. Again, I think the act of writing it down has more of that self-perception commitment to yourself that you are going to engage in this. And commitments are often used with multiple other tools. So some of the other tools are pledges, as well as goal setting. So for example, if you ask a participant to commit to something and then ask them to goal set, meaning that you are going to ask them to go one step further and commit to not only doing this activity, but maybe ask them when or how they're going to do to it. By goal setting, you're going to increase your likelihood of that behavior happening and occurring even more than if they just did the commitment itself. So an example of commitments is one of my colleagues is in a county government who was really trying to become sort of a green government, a sustainable urban government, and they were looking to improve their energy use within county government buildings. And so there was a campaign to turn off computers and monitors at the end of the business day. And they looked at this in different approaches. So the barrier that they identified was simply that people were forgetting to do it, which is a pretty easy barrier to overcome. But if you don't know that that's your barrier, then we may not be able to address it, which again is important in understanding what our audience's barriers are. So in order to sort of move past that barrier of forgetting, they had individuals commit to turn their computer off at the end of the day. They had them sign a pledge, and their pledge name, once they signed, was posted online. So again, you're making it public, you're social norming yourselves. And then the pledge was printed out and posted at the bottom of their screen. So you had a commitment, social norming, and then the prompt, which was used to get over that barrier of people simply forgetting. So it was a really successful yet simple campaign. It's important to note, though, that commitments, you want to make sure that people are committing to something that they're likely to engage in anyway, and that you're not being coercive in it. I recently had an experience where I was cold called by an organization that was looking for donations, and I felt bullied. So even though I committed to donating to this organization, and I have to give them credit, they did it really well. They had me commit. They then sent me in the mail a prompt with the pledge sheet. They had me goal set. He actually asked me if there was, I could commit to giving this pledge by a certain date. But the way it came about, it was actually, I felt coerced. And so it was a negative, and it sort of overrode that self-perception of I'm doing something good. So you need to be careful when you're using commitments, and that your audience is embracing it and it's something that they would likely want to do, and that you're not feeling coerced into doing it. Okay, so once you've done all of that, you want to test and pilot the project with a small audience and make tweaks and changes. So as Laura said, this is an intensive process. It's time intensive. It can be resource intensive. And so you don't want to rush through the implementation without piloting it first and making sure that your tools and your strategies resonate with the audience. And you want to make sure that the tools and strategies that you've identified are actually addressing the barriers and benefits that you identified in your audience research. So you can do this, again, rather simply, but it's something that you don't want to skip. You want to make sure that you get it right. So again, another example of this is there was a campaign that was done in Florida. It was targeting landscape companies to try and get them to grass clippings, not to have them blow grass clippings back onto the lawn rather than have them go in the storm drain or in a canal. And so they created incentives, being t-shirts with prompts on it. So they developed a logo, they developed a slogan, and they put that on these t-shirts that they were giving away as incentives. And it turns out that because it's super hot here, because it's super sunny, no one wears t-shirts. They all wear those long sleeves. And so if they hadn't piloted the program, if they hadn't tested this first, they would have spent all this money on their incentives without recognizing that the incentive they were providing to their target audience was simply something that was not of value to them. So it missed the mark completely and they had to reassess. And then once you've piloted, you've done your tweaks, you've figured out what works and what doesn't work, you've really focused on removing those barriers that are consistent, that you could do with your existing resources, that's when you fully implement and evaluate. And again, the evaluation is something that we in Extension already do. It's going to help us to validate the objectives, which should be smart, they should be measurable, and then we should be able to have more impactful evaluations at the end and outcomes of these projects rather than the normal or traditional knowledge gain or intent to use that we have in Extension. We can actually be able to get at some qualitative and quantitative impacts associated with our target behavior. So hopefully we've maybe convinced you and the individuals that are also on the chat that have been sharing their stories have convinced you that there are some great examples that can be used. So where do you start? I think the first thing that you should do is, ooh, my screen is spazzing out on me, sorry. Oh no, I don't know what's going on. But go to the resources. There are a variety of social marketing resources that exist out there, and partner with others. Partners with specialists, partner with other Extension educators who have already used these tools successfully. And don't forget to conduct that barrier research. That really is pivotal in ensuring success of a program. And look at your existing Extension programs, look at some of those behaviors that we're already trying to get our audiences and our stakeholders to adapt, and see if any of them meet the social marketing needs. And so some of the tools that we have available to us, as I already mentioned, the Journal of Extension has some great articles written from our colleagues in there. There's a couple of associations. There are blogs associated with social marketing. There are 2 journals that you can see here, Social Marketing Association of North America, as well as Social Marketing Quarterly. There are conferences that occur both within the US and globally on social marketing. There are listservs that you can participate in. And then I'm sure there are other, oh my goodness, There are other resources available. What we framed much of ours on is Doug Mackenzie's More, Community-Based Social Marketing. He has a website and a book, as well as workshops, and his workshops are available virtually now. Normally they're face-to-face. The University of Florida, EDIS, has a bunch of extension fact sheets on social marketing tools, as well as actual programs that have adopted social marketing, so you can see case studies. There are, again, some other workshops and certificate programs. In addition to Doug Mackenzie Moore's UF, Laura has a certificate program. There are University of South Florida. So there are lots of resources out there for you to use, and we suggest really reaching out to those on the webinar today that have communicated via chat to your colleagues, and if you consider applying social marketing to your extension programs. So I think we're done with that. We've got a few minutes for questions.
If you have a question, please type it in the chat box.
And I noticed we had someone in the chat box who privately texted or chatted a social marketing extension program. So I'll read it out to you. Their goal was for staff to create online video content for the programs, and the behavior was to schedule all staff planning and review sessions, purchase AV equipment that works with educators' smartphones, and don't schedule something with someone when they say they're going out to shoot a video. We have a question. What is the most successful incentive that you have used? I'm going to open that up to Laura also, because she has more experience. I do want to say with incentives, though, don't fall back on money. Laura and I are currently working on a social marketing campaign for septic to sewer conversion projects. And our funder, which is the state of Florida, the Department of Environmental Protection, they were really interested in this because they have funded numerous programs for voluntary connections where they've essentially provided the monetary incentive for conversion. And a large majority of those had to give the money back because money alone turned out to not be the biggest barrier to conversion. And so if they had done their audience research, they would have found out that there were other barriers that existed and that money wouldn't have gone to waste. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura and see if she has any other examples of incentives.
Oh, of course I'm blanking at the moment. My short answer would be the incentive that is the most valuable to your audience. Not a great answer, but I'm going to have to think about that.
And we are kind of getting close on our time. I know there is a question in the chat box. Maybe you could respond to that question, asking if you have any colleagues in human sciences or family consumer sciences who have done social marketing programs. But I do know you have an evaluation poll that we would like to launch, and we're going to ask everyone to please respond to the 3 very short questions. So let's launch the first question. And I want to thank our presenters for today. It was very valuable information, I think, for all of us in cooperative extension. And we thank you for sharing your expertise and your experience with this. All right,
Thank you.
our poll should be going up soon.
And I did notice there's a question about human sciences or FCS faculty who have used social marketing. I can't think of any colleagues in particular, although nutrition management is, there's been a lot of social marketing work in that. I would, and again, I'll let Laura provide some context also. One of the resources that I used for some of the case studies today was website Tools of Change. And they have case studies there, and a lot of them focus on nutrition, human health. So I would send you there, toolsofchange.org, to maybe see some examples.
I would agree with that. You can, on that website, you can look up all sorts of information by context, and it's really helpful. I'm not thinking of anyone off the top of my head at our university, but I know nationwide there are folks working in family, youth, and community sciences in social marketing. So there are definitely people applying it in that area for sure.
And just a reminder, our second poll is up for our evaluation. Please respond to that, and we'll be launching the third question in just a minute, because it is 2:01 and we would like to wrap up our webinar for today. And I just want to thank everyone for participating in our ESP webinars. We will be putting out a call for new webinars in the 2021 year. So think of ideas that you would like to submit to share with our members and provide professional development opportunities. And please, before you leave us for today, respond to that third question on the evaluation poll. And I once again like to thank everyone for participating. Thank you especially to our presenters today, Lisa and Laura. And everyone have a wonderful rest of the day, and we will see you soon. And just a reminder, if you haven't registered for the ESP virtual conference, get your registrations in.